What's going on YouTube? So it's been a really long time since we last reviewed a Lexus GS, 4.5 years to be exact. But now we're here with the latest 2020 version, which we recently found out will be the last version ever sold in America. So what we wanted to do was take one last look at this Lexus midsize sedan and bid it a final farewell after 4 generations. So for those of you who don't remember, the GS was kind of the Lexus that started it all, so to speak, in terms of the brand new design language. So this was actually the first Lexus to get the now iconic and still kind of controversial spindle grille, but back in 2013, this was really a big deal. So of course, this is as large as ever. Actually, I believe it was enlarged a little bit bigger back in its 2016 refresh. And we do have the black mesh here on the F-Sport. As far as your headlights, they also have always been controversial with that swoop design, and then in 2016 Lexus even separated it out to make it even more aggressive. And on this specific example, we have the optional triple beam LED headlights. Now down here at your wheels, there are a couple different versions you can choose from. The standard GS 350 is going to have an 18-inch alloy, but if you choose the F-Sport version, that's where you're going to get this 19-inch contrast alloy. Of course, you got your F-Sport branding, and then coming up here to your mirrors, they are power folding, heated, and auto dimming on this specific example.
Now, walking around to the GS's rear end, I have to say, I've always thought this GS looked really quite nice, and of course that does continue. Now up top, we do have a spoiler on the F-Sport models. Down below, fully LED tail lights on this GS, and then at the very bottom, we also have trapezoidal exhaust pipes across all of the GS lineup, which does give it a sporty flair. Now, of course, even though this is relatively old, it still is a Lexus after all, so they do throw in their Lexus Safety System suite as standard across the entire lineup. Well, guys, I'm really looking forward to taking this GS out for a spin, so let's go ahead and hop inside before we do that.
So the GS does have the same key fob as all the other Lexus models, as well as their smart entry system. So all you have to do is just reach behind the handle and it will unlock, and your mirrors will electrically fold out. And then checking out the interior here. As you can see, honestly, it still makes a great first impression when you peek inside of this cabin. Now for this video, I'm not going to obsessively detail every single derivative of this interior, but I will say that the vast majority of the models will come with real leather seating, and then this specific example is equipped with my favorite interior color, which is the Rioja red, kind of a dark, rich looking red with some black accents. Definitely looks stunning. And turning over here to your door trim, that same Rioja red leather does continue over here, and you have some black leather above it. We also have aluminum accents on this F-Sport model. And then all 4 of your windows are going to be one-touch automatic. And then as far as these seats, they do adjust in just about every way you can imagine. Since you have a power thigh extension, you even have power adjusting bolsters as well. And the leather quality is definitely very good. And like I said, I really like the way that these seats look. So I have to say, upon re-entering this cabin for the first time since 2016, that the materials have definitely stood the test of time. So across your upper dashboard, this is actually finished in a leather material with a color contrast stitching all throughout. Below that, you have a soft touch plastic through this area. and then this really cool aluminum trim on this F Sport model. Once again, going downward, you're going to have more soft touch materials, and you're going to find a nice leather material right here for your knee to rest against. And I did notice that even the lower parts of the door trim are soft touch plastic, which is pretty unusual even among modern cars. Now to start up the GS, you do have push button start. Now checking out the gauges here, if I'm not mistaken, this started the trend of putting the LFA inspired gauges into the more mainstream Lexus models. So you do have this setup, which is very common among Lexus products nowadays, but you've got your big tachometer right there in the middle and your 4.2-inch multifunction display there on the side. This specific example does not slide though, like some of the other Lexus models. And then in addition to that, on this particular model, we also have a head-up display, which I'm having a little trouble showing off there, but it is right above the steering wheel. And then speaking of the steering wheel, of course you do have electric power assisted steering. You also have a very nice leather wrap steering wheel with some perforated leather over here. Very nice and thick. It also has F Sport branding. As far as the wheel itself, it is power adjusting, standard on every single model. And you will also find steering wheel heating. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about interior storage like always. So when you slide this back, the first thing you're going to reveal is actually a couple hidden buttons. This one turns on and off your parking sensors, and then this one right here, that actually adjusts your rear sunshade. So that's kind of a cool feature you don't see in many cars. Slide that back further and then lift it up. And we'll pull this tray out, and as you can see, there is a lot of space. Very impressed by the amount of space in a vehicle, because it's not a gigantic vehicle. And then when we kind of put it to the test here with like the coupon index, I'll call it, we can put in this whole stack of coupons without even folding them at all. Now in front of that, underneath of this aluminum, we've got our two cup holders, but there is not any more storage up here in the front. Now as far as the shifter, this is the traditional gated shifter for the Lexus brand. You can bump over here to the left to shift manually, and you do also have paddle shifters as well. And then when we head into reverse, you're going to find a standard backup camera with active trajectory, as well as those parking sensors I mentioned earlier, but you will not find a 360-degree camera system on the GS. And then back behind the shifter, you have your drive mode controllers. With the F Sport, we have the additional Sport Plus drive mode. And then you have your electronic parking brake, which does automatically deploy. Now turning over here, we have our climate controls. This, of course, is a dual zone automatic setup. And as you can see, it has a really cool rolling animation that I like a lot. And then below that, we have our settings for our automatic 3-stage heated seats, as well as our 3-stage ventilated seats. Now this particular GS is pretty high end, so as you would expect, we have the upgraded 17-speaker Mark Levinson premium sound system. So let's go ahead and take a sample of that. Yeah, I have to say I'm very, very impressed by this sound system. It is absolutely incredible sounding. Okay, so now we'll take a look at what is probably the most dated aspect of the GS's cabin, and that's going to be the Inform system. Now this is an older style setup with the recessed display. The display itself is gigantic. It's 12.3 inches. It was actually the first Lexus to include the gigantic 12.3-inch display, so that was really a major thing back when the GS came out. You know, so the display itself is great, but it is still recessed back there, and it is not a touchscreen like you see in some of the most recent Lexus products like the new RX. That means you will be controlling it with this remote touch controller, and this too is also the older style joystick instead of the touch pad that's kind of like a laptop. Now, of course, I'm not going to go through every single feature or anything, but I will point out that you have standard navigation as well as the split screen abilities, and you probably didn't expect to find it, but you won't have Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. Now, up above that, we do have an auto dimming mirror with 3 HomeLink universal remotes. And then finally at the very top here, we have a standard size moonroof, as well as a really nice feeling, high quality headliner.
Alrighty, so hopping into the GS's rear seat. This is still definitely a very nice place to spend time, since you do have plenty of space and there is a lot of comfort back here. So as far as your legroom measurements, it's going to come in at 37 inches of rear legroom and 38 inches of rear headroom, which actually is a little bit smaller than the ES. Dimensionally, this is actually a little bit smaller than the ES. But, you know, as far as rear seating position, I still have probably 6 inches of rear legroom, and my feet can easily slide up underneath the seat, so definitely not any issues in terms of space. Now, as far as the feature set is concerned, you do have rear vents, no climate controls though. You have a 12-volt outlet, and heated rear seats are available, but this particular model does not have it. And the central armrest can fold down to give you a nice little storage compartment. This is where your climate controls would be on the higher end models, and then you do have pop-out cup holders in the end. Now, walking up to the trunk, even though this is a sedan, it has a optional power one for $400, so just locate the button under the lid and it will open right up. Now, once inside, you're going to find 16.2 cubic feet of space in this GS's trunk, which is quite a bit of space. It's right on par with that of like the Lexus ES. And as far as how Lexus has finished it back here, of course you have nice carpeting, and up underneath of the floor we do have a spare tire. Now, over here at the passenger seat, you do have quite a few ways of power adjustment, even lumbar support. And in front of the passenger here, we do have a really good sized glove box that goes back quite a good way, so you can definitely fit a lot of coupons vertically in here, and it is also nicely felt lined. Now, up top, we do have a sun visor with a light mirror, and it does also detach as well as extend.
All right, nice. Yeah, that was a nice acceleration. So this is actually, after all of these years, this is actually our first time behind the wheel of the GS 350. We did review this way back in the day.
It's one of our first ones, actually.
One of our first reviews, and we didn't get the chance to drive it back then. So this is a new experience for this farewell to the GS, but I have to say, it really feels quite powerful.
I like it.
Now this, of course, is a naturally aspirated V6 engine. 3.5 liters, making 311 horsepower, 280 pound-feet of torque. Now, all the other variants over time have been discontinued. So there used to be a hybrid model that's been gone for a couple years. The 4-cylinder one is also no longer with us. So you're just down to just this 3.5 liter V6. Take it or leave it, more or less. She makes good noises too. I really like that sound. I believe there is, some enhancement for the F Sport as far as like speaker enhancement, but I'm not complaining. I mean, I really like the sound of it.
It definitely doesn't sound like other Lexus 3.5 liter V6 engines, which they can kind of blend into the background. This has like a little bit of a raspy note to it. Now that we're just up to 55 miles an hour here, though, that's really the beauty of, buying in a class of vehicle like this, is just the fact that, you have that sport if you really want it, and as we'll see later on in this video, but you also do have a lot of comfort. So going 55 miles an hour highway speed, it's just extremely, extremely comfortable. You can't even hardly feel any road imperfections, and this is the F Sport, mind you. In addition to that, I will go ahead and get a sound level meter reading here. It seems very, very quiet. Yeah, it kind of confirms my suspicions here. We're at 56 decibels going around 55 miles an hour. So that's a very, very low rating for the sound level here. So definitely a quiet sedan.
And just kind of, going around that corner there and getting up to speed reminds me of back when this came out, and just how revolutionary it was. I remember maybe Car and Driver or Motor Trend and a comparison test with like an E-Class and an Infiniti, back then the M, and I remember them talking about how that this has out-dynamicked German competitors like the 5 Series and the E-Class, and how big of a deal that was for Lexus back in the day, because this is kind of the first Lexus that established the new character that we've seen develop over all the years since then. So I mean, this is of course going away, but this is always going to be remembered as an important vehicle in that Lexus heritage, because it was kind of a turning point for the whole brand. So we're trying to do this thing where we're I guess identifying some of the strongest characteristics of a vehicle and some of its weakest characteristics, and calling it an airball and a slam dunk. Yeah. So,
we are in Kentucky after all. So.
That's right. Got the Kentucky basketball on. But in that vein, since I'm talking about the driving dynamics, I really just want to declare that as the slam dunk of this vehicle, because this is still drives remarkably well. For anybody who's concerned that this is dated or is going to feel like an old-fashioned Lexus, it doesn't. Like I said, this was kind of the beginning of good things happening for the Lexus brand, and dynamically speaking, this is really solid, and it's definitely on the sportier end still today than most of the competition, which is something I really like.
I guess that does bring up the point of we have to talk about the airball. Now, of course, this is an older vehicle, so some of the technology is going to be a little bit on the dated side, since it was, originally debuted in 2013. And one of the worst things is certainly this infotainment system. I know it gets a lot of negative press, but I'm declaring this infotainment just the huge airball. It's hard to use in park, much less while you're driving. So honestly, definitely a con of this GS is having that older style infotainment with no touch abilities and stuff like that. It's no good.
Their new stuff works a lot better. Now I want to talk about another aspect that has aged very gracefully, and that's going to be this 8-speed automatic transmission. Performance of this transmission is really nice. It definitely is very responsive to my needs. You know, it doesn't hesitate to shift down when I want more power. And the overall shift quality is smooth, but crisp, so it's not like a real slow, sluggy type of transmission like you might expect from, you know, a less sporty model. You know, it still does have that nice sporty character, matches with the rest of the vehicle. Now, it is worth noting, you're not going to get the 8-speed automatic on every model. If you choose all-wheel drive, you're going to have to go back to the 6-speed automatic transmission. So that's something to keep in mind. But if you get the rear drive model, it's going to have the 8-speed automatic.
And I guess that does kind of lead into the fuel economy figures. So with that said, we have one engine, 2 drivetrains, so 2 fuel economy figures here. So if you go for the rear wheel drive, that's going to be 20 city, 28 highway, 23 combined. And if you go for all-wheel drive, it's going to be knocked down 2 mpg to 21 combined. And actually, if you go for the F-Sport rear wheel drive, it's 22. So you have 21, 22, or 23, depending on which trim level you get.
So this is it. This is the final goodbye for this GS. You know, this is the last model year on sale in America, and you know, our test drive is coming to an end. So as far as, you know, like, final thoughts, will we miss this?
Certainly.
Yes.
Yeah.
It holds a special place to us. It was one of the first vehicles we ever reviewed. So you know, back then we thought this was the absolute coolest thing of all time.
Yeah.
You know, so it does hold a special place in our heart. But I think it holds a special place in everybody's heart. This is a model that's been on sale in the Lexus lineup almost since the beginning of the entire Lexus brand. And through all these generations, this, you know, really has become a fine automobile. And, you know,
Sad to see it go.
Yeah, you are sad to see it go.
Alrighty, so now let's go ahead and discuss the pricing for this GS. Now, for the very base model, that's going to start at $51,395, and then if you want to go for the F Sport, that's not going to be too much of a price premium at only $52,760, and those are for the rear-wheel drive version. Now, as far as how this particular tester is equipped, we have the all-weather package for $290, color head-up display $900, triple beam headlights $1160, Mark Levinson audio system $1380, one-touch power trunk $400, park assist $500, F Sport heated steering wheel $150, all-weather floor liners $84, door sills $425, trunk mat $370, and then add in the destination charge of $1,025, and this one comes in at $61,189, which pretty much represents about the highest end GS that you can get. And I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with that price point. It still is going to be quite a bit less than some of the German offerings, like the BMW 5 Series and Mercedes E-Class. Well, guys, we've enjoyed watching this in-depth look at the 2020 Lexus GS 350. We really appreciate you watching, and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and we'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.